He was chained for years in a forgotten backyard. No love, no freedom, just silence and steel. Everyone who tried to help him walked away, except one man who didn't say a word, just sat still, day after day, waiting for a sign of hope. What happened next? No one was ready for it, not even him. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe, like this video, and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Now let's jump into the story. The phone rang just as Lucas Brandt was about to pour himself a cup of late-night tea. He hesitated. Most people didn't call this late unless something was wrong. The screen lit up with a number he didn't recognize. He picked it up anyway. Lucas Brandt? A woman's voice asked quickly. Speaking. My name's Nina Caldwell. I run a small animal shelter in Pine Hollow, Oregon. I know this is sudden, but we need help. Badly. Lucas leaned against the kitchen counter, his voice calm. What kind of help? There was a pause on the line, then Nina spoke again. Slower this time, more serious. It's a dog. A canine. He's been chained behind a house for what we think might be years. The neighbors say they've heard him barking forever, but no one ever reported it until now. Lucas felt a cold knot form in his chest. How long has he been like this? At least 5 years, Nina said. The house was abandoned. The people just left him there. Someone's been tossing food over the fence, but that's about it. Lucas walked to the window. The night outside was silent, but in his mind he could already hear the dog. Angry, scared, alone. We tried sending people in, Nina continued. Animal control, local trainers. No one could get near him. He's feral. Completely. We're at a breaking point. If we can't get through to him soon, we might have to... She stopped. Lucas knew what she wasn't saying. He had heard it too many times before. He looked at the clock. It was just past midnight. I'll be there by morning, he said. You don't even want to know more? I don't need to, he replied. This kind of call doesn't wait. By sunrise, Lucas was driving along a winding 2-lane road toward the small, misty town of Pine Hollow. The fields rolled out around him in shades of gold and gray. His mind was already preparing for the smell of rust and rot, for the sound of a chain scraping against concrete, for the look in a dog's eyes that no longer knew how to hope. He had worked with many traumatized dogs over the years. Former police dogs, military service animals, even abandoned pets turned aggressive after years of neglect. But there was something different about this one. Something about the silence that had followed Nina's words made him feel like this. Case was heavier somehow. When he pulled into the gravel driveway beside the shelter, Nina was already outside, pacing with a file in her hand. She was in her 30s, tall, with dark circles under her eyes and a kind of exhausted worry that clung to her. You made it, she said with a tired smile. Lucas nodded and shook her hand. Where is he? She pointed toward a narrow road, behind the shelter. He's about 10 minutes from here. The house is falling apart. We're not even sure who owns it anymore. But the dog, he's still there, still chained. As they drove together in silence, Nina finally spoke again. We named him Blaze, not because of how he acts, he's not fiery or bold, but because we're hoping there's still some spark left in him, something we can save. Lucas didn't respond. He'd learned over the years that words didn't fix things. Actions did. When they arrived at the house, Lucas could feel the tension in the air before he stepped out of the car. The place was overgrown, weeds tall enough to brush his knees. The fence was leaning, held together by more rust than metal. Then he heard it, a deep, raw bark, rough like gravel. Each sound felt like it had been pulled out of a throat unused, to anything but screaming. Lucas approached slowly. Blaze was on the far end of the yard, chained to a cracked cement block. His fur was thick with dirt, his eyes sharp and wild. He lunged the moment he saw them, the chain jerking tight as he snarled and snapped. Nina flinched beside him. This is what he does every time, all day, every time anyone gets close. Lucas didn't speak. He walked to the edge of Blaze's chain length and sat down on the ground, cross-legged, his back straight, his hands on his knees. What are you doing? Nina asked. Introducing myself, he said softly. The barking continued. Blaze threw his body forward again and again, trying to reach the man who didn't run, didn't yell, didn't even blink. Lucas didn't move. Minutes passed, then an hour. Nina brought him water, but he barely noticed. Blaze's barking started to come less frequently now. The snarls still came, but they were mixed with confused pacing, uncertain glances. Lucas sat there until the sun began to drop low in the sky. Then finally Blaze stopped barking. Just for a second. He stood still, breathing hard, watching Lucas. With guarded wild eyes, it was a tiny pause, a heartbeat of silence. But Lucas caught it. "That's it," he whispered. "You saw me." He didn't need to win the dog's trust that day. He only needed one thing. A moment where Blaze chose not to fight. The first choice. The first crack in the wall. And Lucas knew. This was the beginning of something worth every second of waiting. The morning was cool when Lucas returned to the abandoned property. Dew clung to the weeds and the old house stood quiet in the gray light. But as he stepped out of his truck, the barking started again. Loud, angry, afraid. Blaze had not forgotten. Lucas didn't expect him to. He carried no leash, no tools, no commands. Just a folded blanket, a thermos of coffee, and the same patience that had served him for years. He walked slowly to the edge of Blaze's chain length and sat, just like the day before. Blaze barked and lunged, the metal links rattling like thunder. But Lucas didn't move. He just sat, still and calm as if he were part of the earth itself. By noon, the barking came in bursts instead of constant waves. Blaze paced the worn patch of dirt, occasionally shooting a look at Lucas like he was trying to make sense of him. Lucas spoke softly for the first time. "You've got fire in you," he said. "I get it. The world gave you every reason to light it up." Blaze huffed, ears back, tail stiff. But he didn't bark. The silence stretched between them like a rope slowly being tied. That evening, Lucas returned home to find someone unexpected, sitting on his front porch. His nephew, Jude, 16, tall and quiet, with a mop of sun-bleached hair and a face that didn't give away much. "Mom sent me early," Jude said with a shrug. "Something about you needing help with animals." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Do you even like dogs?" "I like animals more than people," Jude replied. Lucas couldn't argue with that. The next morning, Jude came along to the property. He sat in the truck at first, watching from a distance. When Blaze started barking again, Jude looked up from his phone. "That him?" he asked. Lucas nodded. "Blaze. He sounds like he's yelling at ghosts." Lucas smiled faintly. "Maybe he is." After an hour of sitting in silence with Blaze, Lucas stood and returned to the truck. Blaze was still pacing, but he hadn't barked in over 20 minutes. "Want to meet him?" Lucas asked. Jude raised a brow. "Will he eat me?" "Probably not today." Over the next few days, a rhythm formed. Lucas and Jude would drive to the property just after sunrise. Lucas would sit inside the circle of the dog's world, just outside the reach of his chain, and Jude would remain by the fence, sketching, in a notebook or tossing a stick to himself. Sometimes he would talk to Blaze from a distance, casual stuff. "Nice weather today, huh?" Or, "Bet you've got a better view from that end." Nothing serious. But it didn't go unnoticed. On the fourth morning, something changed. Lucas placed a soft dog treat on the ground, not close but within Blaze's view. Then he returned to his sitting spot and waited. Blaze ignored the treat for hours, his eyes jumping between it and the two figures in his yard. The old growls still came, but they were fewer now. Less rage, more confusion. Finally, just as the sun started to dip, Blaze crept toward the treat. He didn't eat it. Not yet. But he sniffed it, then backed away. "That's progress," Lucas whispered. The next few days brought more small changes, the kind of changes only someone like Lucas would notice. Blaze barked less. His ears stayed up longer. When Lucas moved, Blaze didn't flinch. He watched. He studied. One afternoon, Lucas spoke again. "You're starting to remember," he said gently. "Not who someone made you be, but who you were before that chain. Jude added. He's not growling at my voice anymore. Lucas nodded. That means he's thinking, not reacting. By the end of the week, Blaze had taken 2 full steps closer to Lucas. 2 real steps, unforced, voluntary. Lucas didn't move, a muscle. Let him decide, he whispered to Jude, who was watching with wide eyes. Every second he chooses to stay is a win. Jude had started drawing Blaze now, page after page of the K9 in different poses, standing, pacing, even one where he was lying down with his head up. He's not just angry, Jude said one evening. He looks lost, like he's stuck between fight and flight. Lucas glanced over at his nephew, surprised by the insight. That's exactly where he is. On the 10th morning, Blaze took the treat and didn't spit it out. He chewed it slowly, eyes never leaving Lucas's. Jude let out a quiet breath. He's tasting trust. Lucas smiled. The days blurred into a calm, careful rhythm. Blaze no longer barked when they arrived. He still stayed alert, still paced sometimes, but he was watching instead of warning. One morning, after Blaze had eaten another treat, he took a step forward and sat. Not close, but not at the edge either. In the middle of his circle. Lucas stayed still. That's your choice, buddy, that space. You earned it, Jude whispered. He's learning there's life beyond the wire. Lucas nodded slowly. And we're just getting started. The morning sky was pale and quiet, like it was holding its breath. Lucas parked the truck outside the old house and didn't speak for a moment. Beside him, Jude was tying his shoes, his usual sleepy look replaced by something closer to nervous curiosity. Is today the day? Jude asked. Lucas stared out at the backyard where Blaze was already waiting. The K9 wasn't barking anymore. He just stood near the old cement block, his chain gently clinking as he shifted his weight. Maybe, Lucas said, if he's ready. If we're ready. The past few weeks had changed everything. Blaze no longer lunged. He no longer growled unless startled. He had started taking treats directly from Lucas's hand. Jude had even managed to toss a toy nearby without triggering a reaction. The chain still held, but the distance between man and dog had grown smaller every day. Today, Lucas had brought something new, a harness. It wasn't just any harness. It was lightweight, soft, and designed specifically for dogs who had been through trauma. Lucas had used it before, but never in a case quite like this. Jude followed him through the broken gate and into the yard. So, what's the plan? We try, Lucas said simply. We let Blaze decide the rest. Blaze watched them carefully as they entered. His body was alert but not tense. His ears flicked forward, and his tail, once always stiff and low, gave a small wag. Lucas knelt slowly at the edge of Blaze's space and laid the harness gently on the ground between them. Blaze sniffed the air but didn't move closer. Lucas spoke softly. This isn't a trap. It's a step. Jude sat near the fence, watching closely. He didn't speak. He'd learned that silence had power around Blaze. Minutes passed. Then an hour. Lucas remained still, hands in his lap, his breathing calm. Then, finally, Blaze moved. 1 step, then 2. He approached the harness with cautious steps and gave it a sniff. His body tensed, unsure, but he didn't back away. Instead, he turned his eyes toward Lucas. There was something there. Confusion, fear, maybe even a question. Lucas nodded slightly. It's okay. You're in control. Slowly, with all the care in the world, Lucas reached for the harness and held it up. Blaze didn't flinch. Lucas didn't rush. He let Blaze sniff it again. Then, in a motion so slow it was nearly invisible, Lucas slipped the harness over Blaze's head. The dog froze. Lucas kept his hand still. You're okay, he whispered. Just breathe. I've got you. Blaze's body shook slightly, his muscles tight with uncertainty, but he didn't bolt. He didn't bite. He stood there, breathing hard, eyes locked on Lucas's. Jude sat up straighter. He's letting you do it. Lucas nodded. He's choosing to. After a long moment, Blaze sat down. The harness was on. That should have been the hardest part. But the real moment, the one they had feared and waited for, was still ahead. Lucas took a small cutting tool from his pocket. It was designed for one purpose: to safely and quietly remove heavy chains. He held it up slowly, letting Blaze see it. The canine didn't growl. He tilted his head slightly, unsure. Lucas scooted forward inch by inch until he was close enough to touch the chain. Blaze didn't move. With one hand resting gently on Blaze's shoulder, Lucas positioned the tool around the chain. "After this," he whispered, "you'll never feel this weight again." There was a soft click as the tool locked in place. Then, one squeeze. The chain broke. A sharp sound rang out, the metallic clink of steel hitting the ground. Blaze jumped, startled by the noise. But instead of running, he did something no one expected. He pressed his body against Lucas. It wasn't aggressive, it wasn't fear-driven, it was searching. He was seeking safety from the only person he'd ever trusted. Lucas didn't move. He let Blaze lean into him. "You're free," he whispered. "You did it." The yard fell into silence again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. Blaze looked down at the broken chain lying in the grass. He took a cautious step forward, then another. He looked back confused, like he expected to feel the usual tug, the cruel reminder that he couldn't go far, but nothing held him back. He turned to Jude, who was now standing at the fence with wide eyes. "He's moving without it," Jude said quietly. Lucas watched with awe as Blaze sniffed a patch of weeds outside his old circle. His body was unsure, his steps slow. But he didn't return to the center. He was exploring. He was choosing. Later, Blaze did something that took everyone by surprise. He rolled onto his back in a patch of sunlight and stretched out like a dog who had nothing to fear. Jude blinked. "He's relaxed." Lucas nodded, unable to speak for a moment. His throat was tight with emotion. This wasn't just freedom from a chain. It was the beginning of a new life. Blaze wasn't healed yet. There would still be fear, still be work. But the hardest part, the decision to trust, had been made. And it had come not by force, but by choice. Lucas stood slowly, brushing dirt from his jeans. "Let's go, Blaze," he said softly. And for the first time, the canine followed, unbound, unchained and unafraid. A week had passed since the chain hit the ground. Lucas had moved Blaze to his property, a wide, fenced piece of land just outside town. The space had been built for rehabilitation, quiet corners, shaded areas, open fields. But until now, no dog had ever come here straight from a backyard prison. Blaze paced the yard slowly, wearing his soft harness, tail low but not tucked. His movements were cautious but not panicked. He didn't hide. He didn't bark. He simply walked the edges, learning where the world ended and freedom began. Lucas sat on the porch steps, a cup of coffee in hand, watching with care but not pressure. "He hasn't tried to escape once," Jude said from beside him. "That's got to mean something, right?" Lucas nodded. "It means he knows he belongs here, even if he hasn't figured out what that means yet." Blaze's routine began to settle. He woke with the sun, sniffed every corner of the yard, and would eventually circle back to the porch, where Lucas always waited. Sometimes Blaze sat nearby. Other times he'd just stand for a moment, making eye contact like a quiet check-in, then return to exploring. Jude had taken to tossing soft toys into the yard, letting Blaze watch but never pushing him to fetch. One afternoon, to everyone's surprise, Blaze picked one up, a rubber ball, and dropped it near the fence. Not close to Jude, but close enough. Lucas smiled. That's an invitation. The next day, Blaze carried it closer. Nina visited not long after the move. She stood at the gate, stunned by what she saw. "He looks completely different," she whispered. "When I called you, I didn't think this was even possible." Blaze stood a few feet away, not approaching but not retreating either. His ears twitched. He sniffed the air. Then, to everyone's amazement, He sat. "He knows you," Lucas said. Nina nodded, eyes misty. "I can't believe it." "I can," Jude said quietly. He just needed space, and time, and someone who didn't give up. As Blaze became more comfortable, Lucas began gentle training, not with commands but with connection. Every touch was offered, not forced. Every step forward was a reward in itself. Blaze learned to walk on a leash, not out of control, but out of curiosity. He learned to enter the house slowly, nose leading the way, paws testing the floor like it might disappear under him. He had his own room, soft bed, water station, quiet lighting. The crate stayed in the corner, door always open, a safe spot, never a cage. The first night Blaze slept outside the crate, Lucas stayed awake longer than usual, watching from a chair in the hall. In the morning, Blaze greeted him with a wag of the tail, just once, just a little, but it was enough to bring tears to Lucas's eyes. A month passed, then two. Blaze was no longer the dog that had snarled behind the fence. He didn't bark when strangers came to the yard, he watched. Sometimes he paced, but more, and more often, he stayed calm. Lucas noticed how other dogs at his center responded to Blaze. They watched him with curiosity. Some approached him, and when they did, Blaze didn't snap. He didn't flinch. He stood tall, tail neutral, body strong. He was becoming something new. Not just a dog who had been rescued. A dog who could help others heal. One morning, as the sun peeked over the trees, Lucas opened the big gate to the training field, a space Blaze hadn't yet entered. "Ready for something new?" he asked softly. Blaze tilted his head. Then slowly, stepped through. Jude watched from the deck. "That's the farthest he's gone on his own." Lucas nodded, walking behind him with an easy pace. Blaze trotted ahead, sniffing the wind, moving with more confidence in every step. He stopped near the center of the field, stared at the sky for a moment, then did something that stopped Lucas in his tracks. He rolled onto his back in the tall grass, tail wagging, mouth open. Joyful. Lucas didn't say a word. He didn't need to. This was it. Not the end of a journey, but the start of a life. Blaze's adoption was never official. It didn't need paperwork. It happened in the quiet moments, when Blaze started sleeping at the foot of Lucas's bed, when he followed him around the house, when he rested his head on Jude's knee during a thunderstorm. Lucas never put up a "for adoption" sign. Not once, because Blaze had already made his choice, and Lucas had too. Today, Blaze helps Lucas work with other traumatized dogs. He doesn't bark much, but his presence is powerful. When new dogs arrive, scared and uncertain, Blaze is often the first to greet them with a quiet look, a calm stance, and a soft step forward. It's like he's saying, "I know what it feels like, and I know you can come back from it." And somehow they believe him. Blaze never became a show dog. He doesn't do tricks. He doesn't chase tennis balls for hours. But he walks beside Lucas every day. No leash needed, no chain in sight, just trust. The kind that was built, not bought. The kind that lasts.